It has to be said, first of all, that the divide between Iran and Saudi Arabia is a divide about strategic issues and power in the region, but it's also a divide that really separates two states, both of which are kind of theological-based states, both of which represent a certain vision of Islam, and both of which look to clerical establishments to provide them legitimacy. So in that sense, the divide that Iran and Saudi Arabia represent are institutional divides and theological divides. They're not simply power struggles. They're about basic conceptions of political order that are derived in part based on religion and different interpretations of Islam. Now, both sides have used their own sort of perspectives on supporting their vision of Islam to fund armed militias and groups throughout the region. The Saudis have funded the opposition, for example, in Syria and beyond, of course. Iran has funded its supporters in Lebanon, Hezbollah, its allies, the Houthis in Yemen. And so what started out as a kind of theological, political, strategic struggle has transformed into a struggle by which these two contending states are allied with different actors, and in so doing they've exacerbated local conflicts, making it very difficult to resolve conflicts in Yemen, conflicts in Iraq, conflicts in Syria, and the continuing conflict in its own way in Lebanon, because Lebanon is in some sense a conflict state.
We need to talk about ending the sort of political exclusion, marginalization, poverty, and all the causes which have in the first place led into the conflict, sectarian conflict in Syria and in Iraq. Because when you have governments that are in fact dealing with their citizens as second-class citizens and marginalize them, exclude them from the political participation and political process, and use extreme violence against them when they try to ask for their rights, human rights, basic human rights. I think you have to address all these issues in order to have the sort of stability and peace and solution to all of these problems.
My inclination as a lawyer, as someone who works on rule of law and peace-building issues, would be to focus on the rights of individuals. It's a kind of a strange counterintuitive dynamic, but the more you focus on individuals, the better able you are to secure a plural identity. And so I would imagine that the more Arab leadership and the more Arab political systems can focus on a human rights framework and on guaranteeing general freedoms and protections for their citizens, the better able they'll be to feel included and to manifest their diversity.
When we're talking about democracy and supporting democracy in the Middle East, there's no other conclusion that I can reach except to find ways to include Islamist parties and movements in the political process, because if they're not allowed to participate and if you're banning them and repressing them, that's not compatible with any kind of any semblance of democracy. Democracy requires including groups, however problematic they may be, as long as they're willing to participate in the democratic process and participate peacefully. And not all Islamist groups are peaceful, obviously, but if we're talking about mainstream Islamist groups that believe in the parliamentary process and believe in participating in the parliamentary process, then they should have a right to do so.
The absence of leadership, I think, from the United States is a major contributing factor, because it essentially gives the green light, particularly to our supposed allies in the region, that they can continue to sectarianize and manipulate these identity struggles between Sunni and Shia in ways that only exacerbate them. I think that it's ultimately the regional and global situation is critical, because we have these deeply embedded struggles, these deeply embedded identity struggles. Sunni and Shia are just among them. They're perhaps the most dangerous and most widespread. But we also have an international community that's either checked out from playing a meaningful role or contributing and exacerbating these conflicts. And I see that from the United States as well.